Welcome back to another episode of the Basement Ballers. What do we call it? I don't even know. Show, podcast, whatever you want to call it. And Brahim is going to introduce us today to the topic of the video, which is
what we learned from the past season, the 2024-2025 footballing season in Europe. Kidding.
Yes, sir. And so we're going to be going through every major league. Well, not every major league, but England, Spain, Italy, Germany, and France a little bit, because we all know that croissant league doesn't really have a lot to talk about. Let's be serious. And we're going to go back and tell you all, and hopefully you guys can join the conversation as well, with regards to what we've experienced and witnessed this past season and what we might come to expect going into next season. So, the biggest league in the world, England. Me, Liverpool fan. Up the Reds. Liverpool are Premier League champions. And they did it with very minimal changes to their squad going into that season. Nobody really expected Liverpool to do anything. I would say maybe on average people had them in top five, I would say. But I would be hard-pressed to find a brother, including myself, who had Liverpool winning the league. Arne Slot, new manager. But now looking back at it, hindsight being 2020, it does sort of add a little bit of aura to FSG, the way that they recruited this manager, because I know there was a lot of conversations with Mandem, like Ruben Amorim and all these guys. But then Arne Slot just comes in, nobody expecting it, but we all kind of knew that he had a similar style to Jurgen Klopp. We didn't know how it was going to work because, again, virtually no changes in the squad. You know what I mean? But that Liverpool side really did hit the ground running, and there were just no other team for a majority of that Premier League campaign that could keep up with the consistency of Liverpool in England. You know what I mean? And that being in a season, Brahim, where we had so many different like English sides winning trophies. We had Liverpool winning the Premier League title, Crystal Palace winning the FA Cup, Newcastle winning the Carabao Cup, and then Spurs winning the Europa League champion. Oh, and then
Chelsea winning the Conference League, even though that's a irrelevant competition. But yes.
And obviously, most of us we all witnessed the season. Most of us knew for Liverpool, in this case, it was the Salah show. Whether you want to say he didn't perform in Europe, whatever you want to say about the brother. In England, it was the Salah show. This man really showed that at 32 years of age, he is still the best player of Liverpool, the most impactful player of Liverpool, and he earns his salary or his contract extension, being, I'm pretty sure now, the highest paid player at the club, which of course he deserves. But maybe some people have had a little bit of question marks surrounding the amount of money we're paying a 33-year-old.
As long as he's delivering, why not?
As long as he's delivering. That's true.
But
now going into next season, Liverpool have only strengthened. It's weird because Liverpool has always been a side that people didn't expect to spend the big bucks. But as Premier League champions, obviously making money from winning the trophy, and also, you know, over the past couple seasons, not being a club that spent an excessive amount of money, there was definitely money in the bank. And FSG knew that if we were going to dominate England, or have a chance at least of dominating England, this is the time to take advantage. Okay? So with the signing of Florian Wirtz, the big one, the 100 million box office signing that nobody expected Liverpool to ever make. His buddy Frimpong, who also comes through, looking a little too excited to be a Liverpool player. And then Kirkez, so far, those are the players, all impressive talents coming to play for our club, with also potential for some outgoings. We already heard of Jero Kwanzaa, who is set to join Bayer Leverkusen. And then Darwin Nunez is surely gone. A lot of links to Napoli and them mans, which we will talk about in a little bit. But overall, Liverpool are looking like title contenders next season.
And speaking of signings and spending, now we move on to Arsenal. So Arsenal have obviously had a window over the last couple of years with Arteta where they've been competing relatively well for the league. I wouldn't say last year was one of those years because they did finish, I believe it was 12 points off of the top. So Arsenal have had a mixed season last year, but with them not making any new signings of note so far outside of Zubamendi and possibly either Sesko or Gyökeres, it's just not enough for a team that's finished runner-up the last 3 years and are probably not going to be able to compete due to the spending of the likes of Liverpool and Man City.
Well, I think that's the big thing right now, because right now Arsenal could strengthen their squad, and surely they will. Obviously, the transfer window's still open. They have a lot of opportunity. I don't see the hunger in Arsenal. I've said this on live streams as well. I don't see Arsenal being hungry to compete with these bigger clubs, right? Because when you have Manchester City and Liverpool signing these players, right? And you still haven't even secured the Zubamendi signing, by the way. He's still not technically an Arsenal player yet,
Yeah.
right? And obviously you still have not, it's almost July, and you still have not secured your striker, which is of course a problem that we knew Arsenal had for a very long time, right? You start to question, do these owners actually have the hunger to compete with the likes of a Manchester City and a Liverpool next season, especially with Arteta and his track record, 1 trophy in 6 years? So I don't think it's looking too good for the Gooners, if I'm being honest. And I do think that it's possible they pick up a trophy. It's possible, but it'll be like one of them ones where it's not going to be the Premier League. I can almost guarantee that. But it's going to be one of them ones where they just really decide, you know what, fuck it. This year we're going for a trophy. Let's put all our eggs in the Carabao Cup or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, the window is looking to be shut very fast on Arsenal's title contention. I mean, next year, with the squad they have, I just don't see it. But moving on to a team that I do see possibly winning the Premier League, we got Manchester City. So obviously, horrendous season last year with Rodri being injured and then finishing third. Went on a run of 1 win in 13 games, I believe, from November to, I think, December or January. So it's been a up and down kind of season. The Champions League obviously underperformed, and this coming season could possibly be Pep's last season. Obviously, there are rumors that he might leave. He did say that he wanted to coach one day in South America recently. So we'll have to see, but they've made obviously a bunch of new signings, Cherki amongst them, Reiners from AC Milan. So they're looking to snatch the crown back from a Liverpool team that has only gotten better, obviously, with the signing of Wirtz, Frimpong, and Kirkes. So I believe next year's title race will be between both of them. I don't see Arsenal being in there like they have the last couple of years. And I believe it's going to be another edition of City Pool title race.
I think so too. And I think, like, perhaps people might view this as a bit of a odd opinion, but I think the major question isn't players and talent, because we know that Manchester City have talent. They have the players now, of course. They have a revamped midfield, which was very important, something that they were struggling a lot with last season, sort of their ability to create and sort of release Haaland and get the most out of that brother. And obviously the fall of Phil Foden and people, their wingers especially. I mean, Savinho, he was all right, but he wasn't like a world beater. Of course, Omar Marmoush making his mark and probably being one of the brightest lights of that City side when he joined in January. But now with the revamped midfield, we still have yet to see what they possibly will do for their back four, whether they're going to change that, whether they're going to maybe sort of start to stray away from the John Stones and the Ruben Diaz's of the world, or what. But these guys are the team to watch out for next season, coming as Premier League contenders, I should say. The one thing, though, that might be a bit against them, or I guess it's kind of two things, is one, is it too much change, right? So obviously they're playing in the Club World Cup right now, so they're having the opportunity to get these new brothers in some minutes. It's going to be actually, I think, in the long term beneficial for them, right? But that's the one thing, the first thing. Is it too much change for this City side to then go and win after all that change, right? Number two, though, okay, and this is important, is Pep getting tired, right? Are his tactics running stale? Does he still have the energy? Not the ability. It's different. He's got the mind. He's got the ability. He's an amazing manager, one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. But does he have the energy to take that Manchester City side through a 38-game Premier League season to win it? That's important, because on the flip side, you have an Arne Slot that is probably still hungry, right? and he's obviously still new in the Premier League, relatively speaking, and things like that. So it would be really interesting to see. But I agree with you, Ibrahim. Like for me, City is my number one.
It is my number one, title contender after Liverpool. They're going to be the number one challenger. But now, speaking of Manchester teams, we'll go to the banter side of Manchester United. So obviously, off of a Europa League loss and a 15th place finish, I believe, in the Premier League, they have already gone Cunha through the door. Heavy links with Mbuemo. And there is a possibility they sell Garnacho and some of their other players. But with the way that Ineos and the Glazers just keep sacking people at Manchester United, and with the current state of their finances and their stadium, and the fact that United don't seem to be ready to compete at all in the near future, I expect this to be another banter year for United. Possibly not as bad as this past year, but
Sorry, it's hard to get worse.
I would say a top 8 finish should be within the reaches.
Reaches and the expectations, because regardless of what Manchester United do in the offseason, it's still Manchester United and there's still expectations. Now, their ambition, or maybe perhaps not their ambition,
Their lack of
but
ambition.
for sure, but maybe it's just their recent performances and sort of the state of the club and its ownership, perhaps, is potentially making the club a lot less intriguing, right? Because for me, I'm seeing the likes of Mbuemo, who should have been through the door already, but he's entertaining offers from Spurs, right? Spurs finished, 16th, 17th? Spurs are not like, and they just sacked their manager. They're not like in this crazy position, right? But the fact that Mbuemo is looking at Manchester United like they're the Shaitan Club, like these are the brothers that like if I go there, is it gonna ruin my career type shit? That's concerning for Manchester United. But that being said, Ruben Amorim, he's got a full transfer window to deal with. Now, it's not that there's no excuses for him, but he can really now make an impact or his imprint on the club, because of course it's hard when you join a club mid-season. So we give that to him. It wasn't really mid-season, but let's just give him benefit of the doubt. But next season, 2-3 months in, if this brother's still like catching L's at Old Trafford like it's fucking nobody's business, then he could be at risk of losing his job as well. So it's definitely tough for Manchester United, for United fans. Ineos, I think, genuinely speaking, might be one of the worst things that's happened to Manchester United in a very long time. Like, I understand the Glazers are bad, but Ineos have taken cheap and bum-ass behavior to a whole new level, cutting staff Happy Meals, canceling team barbecues and shit. These brothers have their priorities all out of whack. I don't know what's going on, bro.
But going to a team who actually spends money like crazy. Now, we got Chelsea. So, obviously, this year, top 4 finish and a Conference League trophy. Who would have thought that would be a good season for Chelsea 15 years ago? But Maresca now has had one season, did relatively well given the expectations, but he will be under pressure to perform next season, as Chelsea have spent definitely over $1 billion since Todd Bowley's been in charge, and also they've spent a decent amount on the squad since Maresca's been there. Now, obviously, Mudryk is going to be out for the next 4 years, right? That nice bumper contract Chelsea gave him is looking quite nice right now. It's aged very well, guys. But he'll be under pressure to deliver next year at least a top 3 finish and possibly more than just the Conference League. So we're talking about maybe a deep run in the Champions League, an FA Cup, something like that. But Chelsea are looking to be, I'd say, on the up and up, but some of their signings are still questionable. Like, I don't know why they went and got Liam Delap.
They got him for $30 million. I mean, for me, that's actually a solid signing.
That's a solid signing if you want him to be your backup. But Liam, like, if you're going with an Ipswich striker as your main striker for next year and Nicholas Jackson as the backup, then I don't know. Chelsea need to be going out and getting the best of the best, because that's what they are used to as a club.
But that strategy hasn't really been working for them, right, Raheem? Like they've been splashing the 50, 60, 70, 100 million.
But not on the best players. They've been splashing that on what? Caicedo, who was a Brighton player. Enzo Fernandez, who was a Benfica player. Liam Delap, Ipswich. Nicholas Jackson was with Villarreal. All these things. So they're not really spending on the big boy players. I'm talking about Chelsea back in the day right now would go 100 million to Man City, give me Haaland. They would do stuff like that. But now The transfer strategy is looking to be just buy young and hope for the best, and that might work sometimes, but not all the time. So Chelsea, you guys need to stay away from the kids, bro.
Well, speaking of kids, I mean, they have their eyes, or I mean, I think they've actually signed Estevao.
Yeah, Estevao is coming to the
Right.
bridge,
To come into the bridge.
and
And you know, according to our good buddy Joey, he's the best young talent coming out of Brazil since Neymar.
yeah, but they said that about Endrick, and they said that about a lot of different players. They called Gabriel Martinelli R9.
Oh my God.
So I mean, we'll have to see. But
We'll have to see. But anyway, Chelsea in a better position than other clubs that have underperformed, I would say. So definitely something to look forward to next season for that club. But let's move on, Brahim, to the final Big Six club, which is Tottenham Hotspurs. These brothers are in a very interesting position.
Yeah.
Secured their first trophy in 17 years, which is the Europa League trophy.
and sack the man who got you that trophy.
And sacked the brother that dropped one of the coldest lines we've seen in this age of football. Talking about, I always win something on my second season. That was one. And then he said season 3 is always better than season 2.
And then he got sacked, bro.
And then he got sacked
he
before
lost
season
his
3.
he lost his aura, bro. Daniel
Oh.
Levy stripped him of his aura and his dignity. So the man won you your first trophy in 17 years. Not only is it a trophy, it's a European trophy, and you repay him by sacking him. I know Spurs did not have obviously they had a terrible league season. They lost 22 games in the Premier League out of 38. So that is at least 57-58% loss ratio in the league. However, they were dealing with a lot of injuries and stuff like that. And if I was them, Ange obviously had his flaws, but I would have kept him 1 year because I feel like he earned that with the Europa League win. Say they went into next season by November, December, and they were languishing in the bottom 5, bottom 10 or whatever, then you could sack him. But I just feel like this decision is strange. But they did get Thomas Frank. Will be an interesting appointment. Obviously, did wonders at Brentford, but I don't know. I'm not really sure where Spurs
Thomas
go from
Frank
there.
is a high quality manager. He's not the best of the best. He's not like top tier in English football, right? But I would like that Spurs side, quality wise and like player for player, is not like worlds ahead of Brentford,
No.
if at all,
Yeah.
right? So for me, I'm saying, all right, well, you got this manager who did decent for Brentford, but not like what Spurs fan would come to expect out of Spurs, right? You brought him into this club. I haven't even seen Spurs sign anybody.
Spurs right now have not signed anyone that I have seen. No, they have not. But Daniel Levy's notoriously cheap.
He's a cheap fucker, and I still think that Son might leave.
Son is linked with an exit, yes. We're going to have to see. But with him possibly leaving, and as mentioned, Levy not really notorious for spending big, this coming season might be interesting for Spurs. I mean, the squad they have is mediocre at best, so if they can compete for a couple trophies and finish within the top 10, I feel like Spurs fans would take that. If they can, I mean, they broke the cycle. They've won a Europa League. They could go on and win a Carabao Cup or an FA Cup. Obviously, the Premier League and the Champions League, which I don't know how Spurs got into that, but those trophies are out of the question. But an FA Cup, Carabao Cup could be within the realms of possibilities. But
Yeah. So before we continue, I mean, the plan was to talk about the big 6 clubs in England, but just to wrap up the conversation of the Premier League, I would like to just speak on a few other sort of contenders or teams to look out for, I would say, in the Premier League going into next season, because there were some sides that really did impress us, a lot of us. Now, Newcastle being one of them. I know you guys might be thinking, oh, well, how could Newcastle surprise you when obviously they got all these rich-ass owners now and, all this stuff. But there were players for Newcastle that really showed up when that club needed it.
Dan Burn on your head top, bro. The
Dan
Carabao Cup
Burn,
final.
Livramento, Tonali, Isak, just to name a few. These brothers really made a mark, Bruno Guimaraes as well, really made a mark this season and showed us all why the previous season for Newcastle, it was just kind of like
A fluke.
a bit of a fluke in that they're actually a club that can compete for those trophies, the most important trophies. Of course, they secured a Carabao Cup victory over Liverpool this season, very impressive, and they're playing Champions League football next season.
They are they? Oh, they are, yeah.
I think they're 5th. I think they finished 5th.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
they
sure, and they beat out Villa and Forest.
Yeah, well, speaking of which, those are the other two teams I wanted to just briefly touch upon. So obviously, Villa did make a Champions League quarterfinal for the first time since like the 80s, I believe. And, took PSG, they were a side that really challenged PSG. PSG were able to beat them, I believe, 5-4 in aggregate. But, it was looking kind of scary for them in that second leg.
It was. It was. And
Aston,
you know what, man? You saw the Garnacho thing? How he was wearing
the Rashford jersey.
The Rashford jersey, and obviously pissing off United fans, probably pissing off the United board. So that surely sort of
means
guarantees he's gone. Because me personally, as a Liverpool fan, I wouldn't tolerate that disrespect. Like, imagine I saw Mohamed Salah walking around with the Manchester City jersey. Holy yeah, that anyway, the rage I would feel. So I understand where they're coming from. That's obviously unacceptable. He's definitely gone.
We got Nottingham
Forest defensively were amazing.
Very good. Attacking wise, not, but that's what you get from a Nuno side. But I feel like it would be heartbreaking for their fans because they were very close to securing Champions League football. Obviously, most of the year they were in the
Second
top
or
four.
third, yeah.
They were in the top four for most of the year, only to finish, I believe, 6th or 7th after Newcastle and Villa. So obviously, relatively speaking, successful season. They did secure European football in the Conference League.
Yeah.
So there is that to look forward to.
Man.
But
And then the last side, bro, that just I think needs to be discussed is Crystal Palace. Obviously, the FA Cup winners. This Glasner brother, he's shown that he can play a level. He can play at a level of football that sort of rivals the big clubs that we've already spoken about. Obviously, beating Manchester City in the FA Cup final, and he's really turned that club around. The only thing that I will say about them, though, right, is because the transfer window hasn't closed, right, it would be really interesting to see what players will make their way to the exit, right? Because
Eze is definitely going to be linked to a few clubs.
Eze links, Gahey links. So there are a few links. Chilwell. I mean, I don't know what that brother's about.
Chilwell, yeah, I don't think anyone wants.
But anyway, definitely a club to look out for. But I say that with the knowledge that there could be important players that leave, and obviously Glasner is not a miracle worker. You need players, and so Crystal Palace could compete, could be a side to look out for, but at the same time, they could also finish 12th, like they've been known.
They are used to finishing between
Mid-table.
15th and 10th every year. But you know what? You guys got a nice shiny trophy to be happy with.
Yes, sir. All right, Raheem, it's time to move on to Spain.
Yes.
Your favorite topic.
All right, so starting off with the champions, FC Barcelona. So obviously going into this past season, no one was really expecting much out of Hansi Flick's side. They knew he was a good coach. They knew he had a young team who could possibly make noise and, compete. But the expectation was that Madrid were going to walk the league and Europe with the signing of Mbappe, having come off a Champions League and league double. But the boys surprised them. So with an average age of 25 years old and, a bunch of academy players and Flick's high line, we were able to decimate pretty much most people in our wake this year. Obviously, the Inter result does sting, but a league, Copa del Rey, and Super Cup completes a domestic trouble for the boys from Catalonia. So I feel like all Barca fans can be happy with that. And with the additions now of Jean Garcia and the likely addition of Nico Williams, and also today has been confirmed, we did sign that, I keep forgetting his name, but the one guy from Copenhagen.
Yeah, for $2 million.
We did sign him today. So with some smart signings, and obviously the team is still very young, expect Barca to be competing for years to come, and next year, Madrid better watch out.
So I think with Barcelona, they really impressed me this season as an outside from an outside perspective. One, because they went into the season with no expectations, but with an expectation that Madrid, like you said, we're going to walk the league. And then the Champions League as well. Because Madrid were going into the Champions League as favorites again. Okay, that's one. Number two, they forced a lot of teams in that La Liga campaign to play a very haram low block against them. But time and time again, mind you, they slipped up a little bit. But repeatedly they proved that they could handle that.
Mm-hmm.
The low blocks of the Getafes and these
No, Getafe, the Leganes,
the
the
Leganes,
Las Palmas, Getafe, man, it's what English fans used to call Stoke City. That's what Getafe is. But as long as you have Lamine Yamal and Pedri on your team, and Rafinha, and Lewandowski, and Ferran Torres, and all of these guys, there's nothing to worry about, guys.
100%. And it's the fact that they are so young, which is exciting for Barcelona. Obviously, Real Madrid coming in with their new signings. But, if Barcelona do manage to strengthen, I think they don't need to strengthen their fullbacks because their fullbacks are really good. But having perhaps competent backups to their fullback situation, having somebody that could, I'm sorry, but for me, Araujo isn't a big game player. He's not the guy, from what I've seen, that you can rely on to win big trophies.
Yeah.
And maybe I think a lot of Barcelona fans, after watching this, will obviously agree with that statement. So maybe going out and getting a center back that is a lot more, for example, reliable. I don't know who's really on the market right these days for that sort of.
We do not need a amazing center back, because obviously we already have our stars. We just need a backup center back of quality who can play the system. And unfortunately, Araujo is not a ball-playing center back, and also does not know what the offside rule is. So the sooner we can get rid of him, the better, hopefully. But Barca next year are looking to be dangerous. But now moving on to their hated white rival in Madrid, we have Real Madrid.
Real Madrid, man. Real Madrid, obviously coming off a very disappointing season. They're currently playing in the Club World Cup. Drew to Al Hilal. They beat I'll never be able to remember that other team name. They beat the other team 3-1. Pachuca?
Yes.
Them mans. And then they still have one more game to make it to the next round.
But no one cares about that competition. Madrid were buns this year. So, moving on. Expectations of League, Champions League, and taking every trophy under the sun, only to come up with a Super Cup won in August against Atalanta and an Intercontinental Cup who no one watches. And Madrid this year were not only defeated, they were soundly humiliated, losing to Barcelona 4 times in the span of one season. Obviously, we had the 4-0, the Lamine Yamal game where he dunked on your head top. We had the Super Cup final in Saudi where Lamine Yamal also dunked on your head top. We have the Copa del Rey where Koundé dunked on your head top. And then we have the final League Clasico, which I was attending, where I got to see Rafinha, Lamine Yamal, and Eric Garcia do what, Karim? Dunk on your head top.
All right.
So, Madrid had a putrid season. Vinicius is looking terrible. Mbappe is looking stressed and more of a turtle than he already normally looks like. And they think that the addition of Xabi Alonso and Trent and Saddam Hussein and all of these players will do anything to you. They will do nothing for you. You guys are coming into another era of Barca dominance. But, however, time will tell. But if you do not sell Vinny and get Mbappe a target man, you guys will fail yet again because you're just that club.
Yeah, they've had a rough season. Mbappe started off poorly, but in my opinion, he does end up making up for it. There's still some problems to address. They got a new manager, Xabi Alonso, to come in to revitalize that team's tactics. The Ancelotti tactics were just getting a little stale. It's the fact Barcelona put, 17 goals past them this season?
The aggregate score, 17-6. And mind you, I forgot to add, Madrid did have a 10-point lead on Barca in January.
Yes.
And they let that slip worse than Stevie G. But we'll have to see next year with them. But speaking of a team that actually fumbled, I believe, more than Real Madrid, we have Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid last summer spent upwards of 200 million pounds, euros, dollars, yuan. I do not know the currency, but they signed Julian Alvarez, Sorloth, Lenormand, Conor Gallagher, all these players. And for a while, Atletico Madrid were looking fantastic. They were actually top of the table for a couple weeks in December and January when Barcelona slipped, and they were top of the table. But in the span of 2 months, their whole season unraveled. They went from potential league winners to finishing 12 points behind Barca in third on 76 points, which is not outstanding, obviously. They crashed out of the Champions League to a very, very, very dubious penalty decision. that Julian Alvarez, double kicked his penalty, which we'll never know. But going into next season with Atletico, I do not know what they make of Simeone. So obviously he is a club legend, delivered them plenty of success, but it gets to a point now where you're spending all this money to keep finishing trophyless year on year. Has to be tough for them. I believe Atletico have not won a trophy since their league title of 2021. Unless I am mistaken, they have not won a Copa del Rey, a Super Cup, not a Champions League, not a league. I do not know what Atletico have won since that title of 2021. And is it time for Simeone to leave?
Well, this is actually off the back of Atletico Madrid's exit out of the Club World Cup. They're out.
Exactly.
They finished, I believe, third in their group, a group that consists of PSG and I think Botafogo, who
And Inter Miami.
no,
I believe not Inter Miami. No, it was
was it a
Palmeiras.
No, no, no.
Who was in the group?
There was anyway. It was maybe a Saudi side. I don't. Al Ain maybe.
Yeah, possibly.
But anyway, they end up crashing out of that group, a group that they realistically should have finished second in. It was based on goal differential. They let PSG put 4 past them, and so of course it's unfortunate. Simeone goes on interview. And definitely makes it clear that, we know we had the same amount of points as the team in second place. That's just how goal differential works. Simeone, I don't know what to tell you, my friend. You cannot let PSG score 4 against you. I'm sorry. And then obviously Botafogo going and beating PSG. It really sort of put a bit of a nail in their coffin. They're out. Perhaps that gives them more time to reconsider whether Simeone and other individuals in that squad are the ones to carry them forward. I know there were a few sort of feelers or interests out there for the likes of Andrew Robertson as a left back. There was a little
Theo Hernandez as well from Milan.
I think Theo Hernandez is joining Al Hilal though.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now their primary focus is Andy Robertson. But if they took Clement Longley off of our hands, finally, so they're going to have to deal with him. But if he is one of your starting center backs next year, then Lord. But that pretty much is, I'd say, a wrap on Spain. We'll have to see next year. Obviously, Spain is always around the same thing. The 3 big teams in Spain compete. But who will win next year? Time will tell. But I am telling you right now, time is going to say Barcelona.
All right, you know what? I have a hard time disagreeing with that. But moving on to, in my opinion, the second biggest league in world football.
And the most interesting one from this past season, obviously the title race, we have Italia.
Serie A, the champions being Napoli. Shout outs to Alert, man. Who, of course, after finishing 10th place last season, surprised the world, surprised Italy. They just kept surprising brothers this season and finish on top.
Finish 1 point ahead of Inter Milan, and with them now signing Kevin De Bruyne and Conte deciding to stay for another year, which was obviously in doubt after the end of the season when he spoke about possibly leaving, Napoli looked set to, I'd say, repeat as champions because all the other teams, which we will get to, have gotten weaker over the last couple weeks, months. And speaking of one team that's gotten weaker, we go to Inter Milan, who obviously Inzaghi did go to Al Hilal, gave Madrid the works, obviously, quality manager. But with him leaving, and with them having an aging squad that I believe he massively overachieved with, I don't see where they go from there. Obviously, they finished runner-up in 3 different competitions this year, finishing 1 point behind in the league, getting dusted, humiliated, and pantsed in the Champions League final, and losing 3-0 to AC Milan in the Coppa Italia semi-final. So where do Inter go from here? I do not know.
Well, I think Inter is going to not enter a banter period per se, but I think they're going to enter a bit of an AC Milan period, I would like to call it, where they most likely won't be competing for the biggest trophies in Europe, the biggest trophy of Italy, for perhaps maybe a couple seasons while they rebuild, because like you said, that squad needs to be revitalized. And so they, and obviously their Club World Cup performances, by my opinion, by my standards,
putrid,
have been very below par. It's really honestly has made me question, just how much Inzaghi really contributed to that team. You know what I mean? And really willed a group of not bums. They're not bums. They're amazing. There's a lot of amazing players, but they're players that are perhaps past their. A lot of them past their
Yeah,
prime.
Mkhitaryan, Darmian, DeMarco got exposed badly. They have Acerbi who got exposed badly. I mean, Jan Sommer obviously was great against Barca, obviously. But, laid an egg in the Champions League final. Not through his own fault, I'd say. But,
No,
the team...
the defense let him down, and obviously PSG were just that much better. But anyway, going into next season, I think it's going to be really hard for them to compete for anything, quite frankly. And I think they will be entering a bit of a rebuild. Haven't really signed anyone of note yet in the transfer window, so it'll be interesting. Obviously, they've been sort of focused on the Club World Cup. Which I want to say, so they've won one. I think they won one game and lost one.
Yeah, they have, but their performances have been underwhelming. We're just going to have to see what they do next year, obviously, because they need to invest. And with their coach gone, I just don't see where they go. And similarly, another big Italian team with the same issue, I'd say, is Juventus. Now, Juventus obviously have been mediocre the last 3 to 4 years. Shout out Ronaldo for starting that downfall of Juventus. But right now, they sacked Thiago Motta, got an Igor Tudor, and a season that was very, I'd say, mixed because they went unbeaten in about 20-something games, but out of those 20-something games, 13 of those games were draws, obviously. So Juventus now have a squad that some of it is good, some of it is bad. I'd say it's not the greatest squad, and obviously they need to make investments. But with a new coach and obviously just the state of their squad, there's also another team similar to Inter where I just don't see how they really compete because Juventus are in a bit of a, I'd say, dark period of their history. Obviously, they were used to, basically, Italy for a while was essentially like France and Germany where it was just a one-man, one-team league. And now it's, we're going to have to see.
Everybody gets a turn. Pause.
But
on that, though, they've actually been doing, I would say, relatively well in the Club World Cup. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they've been performing, and although you might question their opposition, perhaps, I think it's definitely something to be excited as a Juventus fan. With teams like Inter, and with teams that I'm about to, or with the next team that I'm about to talk about, which is AC Milan, it's not looking like the most bleak for this side. And maybe with the new manager coming in, maybe it's a sign to start, getting back to winning ways for this club.
We will have to see.
But AC Milan, of course, the other team in Milan, who have been
had a terrible season,
underperforming since the Zlatan title.
Yeah, since the 2021. Yeah, it's essentially, I mean, this year they did win a Italian Super Cup, I believe is what the competition is called, in Saudi, obviously. They did win that. But it's been a poor season. I believe they finished 7th this year, obviously crashed out in the Champions League early. And just, how do I say this? They obviously got rid of 2 managers, or 3, I believe, this year. And they just sold one of their best players to Man City and Reinders. And Leao has, rumors that he will leave as well. So AC Milan, similar to the other teams we mentioned, barring Napoli, are going into next year, I'd say, probably not going to be competing for a title, which obviously reinforces the opinion that Napoli will, I'm not going to say be unopposed, but shouldn't be super hard for them to repeat as champions because the likes of AC Milan, Atalanta also just got rid of Gasperini, who went to Roma. And they're probably not going to be as good next year. Roma, we'll have to see. Obviously, Lazio are always there. But next year should be a Napoli year, essentially.
And I think AC Milan will get worse before they get better.
Yeah, but
so
just would like to shout out, before we wrap up the Italian section, just like to shout out Bologna, obviously, who won their first title in 50 years. They got rid of Calafiori, who went to Arsenal, and they managed to win a title. Figure that one out, man. But they won, obviously, the Coppa Italia, first title in 50 years. Great season, obviously, because if you don't win a trophy for 50 years and you win it, I don't care if you get relegated. That is a good season in my books. But just like to give a shout out to them. Very much a Crystal Palace-like run from them this year.
The year of the underdogs, right?
Essentially, Spurs, them, Crystal Palace, different teams, different trophies. Newcastle also did break their trophy drought of 70 years with that Carabao Cup win on your head top, Karim.
On my head top.
But moving on to the last 2 leagues, we're not going to be talking much about it because obviously we already know what the deal is, but just quickly going on. Germany, obviously Bayern Munich, recaptured the Bundesliga, which is, I don't think, a surprise to anyone. Bayer Leverkusen obviously didn't perform as well as their record-breaking title win of the year before, going unbeaten in the league. And now with Xabi Alonso going to Madrid, Wirtz and Frimpong going to Liverpool, Jonathan Tah going to Bayern, and Xhaka rumored to be going to AC Milan. Expect pretty much the same next year in Germany with Bayern, dominating.
I think not. You say the same. I think a bit more dominant, because the thing is about Bayern is I have no doubts in my mind that Bayern will repeat as champions next season. I have no doubts, unless something absolutely insane happens in the transfer window some. I mean, they've already lost Leroy Sané, but it's not like he was like
He wasn't performing much for them.
He wasn't really performing much for them, right? Bayern's biggest thing right now for me as a consideration is their European tenure, as in can they stay healthy, because that's the main thing, right? They had brothers like Upamecano having an incredible season before he goes down, Jamal Musiala having an incredible season before he went down.
Alphonso Davies obviously was out
Kimmich
as well.
also was performing really well for them this season. Davies with an ACL. There were a lot. This was the year of, despite winning the Bundesliga, unfortunate events for Bayern, because I think fully healthy,
They
Bayern
would
would
have beaten
beaten
the Inter, of course, and then they would have played Barca. And who would they have beaten Barca? Who knows? Obviously, they play in the group stage, and Barca did beat them 4-1. But Bayern is Bayern. But
I think, and and shout out to Vincent Kompany, man. I mean, coming into the side after having an absolutely dropping a stinker with Burnley the season before, and you might be saying, oh, it's just the Bundesliga. It doesn't matter. You were going up against essentially the team that went invincible last season in Bayer Leverkusen. They didn't really have much of a change, right, going into this season. And you guys managed to come out on top. Dortmund having a bit of an off season as well.
Terrible. They started off at one point. They were, I believe, 12th. They finished fourth, I think, this year. But at one point they were 12th. They've gone through a few managers this year. But I'd say the bright spark of Dortmund this year was Guirassy, obviously one of the most underrated strikers in Europe, who scored a hat-trick against Barca in the Champions League, mind you. And now they just added Bellingham's little brother, Job. So trying to do a repeat of 2021 where they add a Bellingham and then probably sell him in 2-3 years.
This is evil Bellingham. This is the evil version.
This is the evil version.
Yeah, like how like Chelsea got evil Saka?
Exactly.
This is like evil Bellingham, bro.
But we'll have to see. I mean, people were clipping a video of him the other day nutmegging someone, so people are getting hyped for him. But we're going to have to see, obviously. But the rest of the German league, I mean, Leipzig are probably going to sell Sesko to Arsenal, or Šeško, I don't know how you say his name. But just expect pretty much the same thing with Bayern next year, winning the league, possibly winning a cup double with the DFB Pokal, and who knows where they'll go in the Champions League. I mean, next year, I'm assuming the competition will be harder than it was this year, with Madrid and Man City notably coming back into the fray, one would assume, and Liverpool, probably going further than just around the 16. So we will have to see. But
moving on to
France. The story of the season, I'd say, was two things. One, Lyon collapsing spectacularly to Man United in the Europa League, up 4-2 with 10 minutes left, only to lose 5-4. And then the biggest, I'd say, surprise was PSG. Now, obviously, them winning the league is not a surprise. Them winning the French Cup is not a surprise. But their first ever Champions League title, and may I add, done in spectacular fashion.
Spectacular. Like, there was no doubt by the end of that Champions League campaign
who was
the best team in Europe. And although you have these big clubs, Man City, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Liverpool, Napoli, all these big Bayern, you know what I mean? Although you have them, right? I would be hard pressed to vote against PSG as a favorite. At least.
Their squad is very young. Vitinha, obviously. They have Dembele, who was coming off a quote-unquote Ballon d'Or worthy season. Debatable. Desiree Doué, right. Barcola. That midfield of Fabian Ruiz, João Neves, and Vitinha is probably the best midfield in Europe outside of Barcelona. In many ways, Barcelona and PSG share a lot of these same, I'd say, qualities that will make them teams for the next 10 years that are going to be very dangerous. Obviously, young squad, have a great double treble winning manager in Luis Enrique. And next year, as you said, I believe they are going to be the favorites to repeat. Obviously, repeating is hard in the Champions League, but we will have to see what them.
It's hard. It is hard, but the way I look at it, bro, is when you are PSG, best team in your country by a country mile, right? And you got to play against bums like Brest and them mans, right? And you,
Bums like breast, by the way. Interesting. Yes.
you know, I'm a rapper. I don't know if you know that.
Mm.
All right. Anyway, you got to play against these clubs, right? And then come Champions League time, you're basically sort of fully focused.
You can afford to rest players
afford-
as well,
you know what
which
I
is
mean?
what they did, for the final against Inter and
Right.
for,
PSG do look very threatening once again. This season, they took down the likes of Liverpool, who had a lot of people had going to the final, right? And especially because at the time, PSG were obviously on a very big high when they went up against Liverpool. But at the time, PSG finished like
16th,
16th in
15th
the-
or 16th in the Champions League group. Yeah, many people tend to forget PSG started off their season woefully, especially in the Champions League. But then when January happened, Dembele decided to go Super Saiyan, and then they were just a freight train that could not be stopped. Obviously, going through Liverpool, Aston Villa, a decent Arsenal team. Who actually Arsenal on XG did outperform PSG. Obviously, XG is I'd say deceiving metric, but Donnarumma did have to save their ass a couple of times in that game. But
Donnarumma
then
had to save their ass multiple times against Villa.
yeah, and
You know what
then
I mean? But-
obviously against Inter, no question, 2-0 up within 18 minutes, ended the game 5-0. Could have been more, obviously, and just we're going to have to see next year with Vitinha having a breakout season, Dembele as well, but I would say that is pretty much
I think the only thing potentially stopping them, quite frankly, is injuries.
Exactly, but barring injuries, I don't see who could stop them outside of possibly a Barcelona, who, as I mentioned earlier, do have a similar kind of circumstance as PSG, being a young squad with exciting talent. Obviously, Lamine Yamal and all that, but we'll have to see. But
And you know what, man? Listen, with the likes of Cherki obviously leaving Lyon and going to the Premier League and potential other exits out of Ligue 1, we could really just be looking at just that league getting weaker over time than they already are, which is unfortunate. Of course, the French league being notorious as well for being a hub for young talent.
yeah, it has a lot of young talent. A lot of Europe's young talents do come from Ligue 1. Obviously, Lyon being one of being a big feeder club is what I call them.
Yeah.
But
But
gonna
so
get
maybe that's something that becomes relevant in that league as obviously PSG continue their dominance. But we'll just have to see. But guys, those 5 leagues for us, biggest leagues in Europe. That is our recap for today. I hope you guys enjoyed everything that we discussed. This is an open platform. We want you guys to share all your opinions on everything that we discussed. For every league, who do you think is perhaps the team to watch out, like as in like an underdog? Who do you think is the favorite to win? And then in Europe, all of Europe, who do you think is the favorite to win? Who are your underdogs? So on and so forth. That will be your question of the day in the comment section. So please don't be shy. Leave everything. Leave all your opinions down there, guys. We are live every day on TikTok, discussing football. Whether we're giving rankings, whether we're doing live watch-alongs.
whether we're bantering you and trolling you and gaslighting you.
Facts. These all are present on our TikTok page at The Basement Ballers. We also have a YouTube page that this will be uploaded to at The Basement Ballers as well. So please subscribe. The goal is 1,000 subscribers, ladies and gentlemen. For more content, for more fun, support the page, leave your likes and everything. And guys, one final thought. All of our links are in the description. The Ballers Academy Discord is out running with over 70 active members. A lot of opportunities for you to come and talk to like-minded folks, people that support your favorite teams. And also, there's a section completely separate for gaming, if that's what you like. If you're a Pro Clubs merchant, if you're a Call of Duty guy, if you just like to destroy noobs on Fortnite, the Ballers Academy Discord server is for you. The link is in the description as well. Please click and join the community. Without further ado, I hope you guys have an amazing day, and we'll see you on the next video.
Peace out.